Hi everyone, welcome to week 2. I hope you had a good day off yesterday. So this week you're going to focus on chapter 2 where you're going to look at different ways of organizing numerical data, more specifically continuous numerical data. So there are two basic ways of organizing your data. One is to break it down into different groups or categories, or your textbook calls them classes, and create a table where you show the frequency, so how often a certain data value occurs in your data set. And then once you have that frequency table that shows how your data is distributed, so that frequency distribution, you can translate that into a graph. And we call these specific graphs histograms. So histograms are graphs that show the frequency of how your data is spread out. So one of the examples that I give you in the handout for this week, you take a look specifically at a data set that looks at the number of credit hours completed by students who have taken elementary statistics. So I have the histogram here on this board, and I'm just going to write down that the sample that I gave you contains 53 data values. So we have a sample size of 53, and here you can see the histogram that shows how the data is spread out. So the horizontal axis here, I have the total number of credit hours completed by these elementary statistics students, and then we can see on the vertical axis the frequency. So what's nice about having a frequency distribution that's displayed as a graph, such as this histogram here, is we can really quickly look at it, and you can see very quickly that if I were to ask the question, what type of students take elementary statistics, you can see that students who typically take elementary statistics are students who have completed less than 77 credit hours. So you can see here that the majority of the data values lie in these first three classes, and it has a relatively high frequency compared to the last two classes here. And so we can also ask questions, which we'll explore in more detail in chapter 6, is we can ask probability questions. So I can ask the question, what are the chances, or what is the probability that if I were to randomly select a data value from that set in the handout that I gave you, what are my chances that I will pick a data value that represents the number of credit hours completed that is between 9 and 31 credit hours? So you can see here that data values that fall between 9 and 31 credit hours fall in this first class. And from our data set, there were 15 data values that are between were between 9 and 31 credit hours. So I can answer that by saying that there are 15 out of 53 data values that are between 9 and 31 credit hours. So that gives me a probability of 0.283, which is approximately 28.3%. So there is a 28.3% chance that if I randomly select a data value from that sample, or from that data set of 53 values, that it's going to be a value that represents 9 to 31 credit hours. We can also interpret this number as saying that, right, on average, about 28% of an elementary statistics class is going to consist of students who have completed anywhere between 9 and 31 credit hours. And so you're going to quickly learn that these numbers, like 0.283 or this percent, 28.3%, it has a very specific name. We call this a relative frequency. All right, so to calculate a relative frequency, you need to know two pieces of information. You need to know your sample size, and you need to know the frequency for that particular class. And so I hope you can see how this will relate to probabilities when we talk about probabilities in detail in chapter 6.